What's up, everybody? How are we doing with our week 4 rapid reactions back again? So, Dan here. Unfortunately, Brian once again is not with us. I'm starting to take it personally. He says he's on a plane and he can't do this from a plane ride, but I think that's kind of whack. But with that said, tough week for a lot of us. Some good, some bad. But either way, you guys need to know what you need to know to help prepare for your fantasy team. So first off, uh, leading with a downer, obviously David Montgomery got hurt. Now we still don't know exactly what's wrong with him. The latest I saw was, they said they don't think it's an ACL, maybe a hyperextended knee, something along those lines. Normally no news is good news. I kind of feel like I'd want some news at this point. So you know, it seems like it might not be a full year injury, but it's definitely going to be a couple weeks by what it looks like. So, if he goes down, that's a really big issue because at this point in Chicago, the leading rusher for rush attempts is David Montgomery at 67, and then a slight bump down for the number 2 leading rusher is Justin Fields with 17 rush attempts. So it's a pretty wide open gap of like people needing to step up and do something. So right now, obviously, we have Damian Williams there. He did get injured, but it's just a thigh bruise, and they say he's gonna be fine. He has had some big games in the past in 2019 with Kansas City. The hard part is he's never been a focal point of an offense, so it's very much up in the air of how much work can he really take on in order to kind of be the guy for an extended period of time. Next, you have Cleo Herbert there as a rookie. This is an extremely speculative ad. He's not like really a great pass catcher or notably a great pass catcher. Uh, um, he's really a deeper league type ad. Maybe in something like a Scott Fishbowl, you pick him up and get rid of someone at the end of the bench and see what happens. Um, Tariq Cohen is out there as well. He's still on PUP, so he's still a couple of weeks away. But if your league has an IR slot and PUP is viable to do that, I think he's a worthwhile addition. At this point, he is good at catching passes, and we know in PPR leagues, especially, that's what scores points and that's what makes people viable and usable in fantasy football. So if you have an IR slot and you're not using it, I would venture in addition, go speculative ad Tariq Cohen, put him in there, slot him in there, and wait and see what happens. If it turns out not to work out, then you just drop him, no harm, no foul. But the pass catching ability is definitely there. And more than anything, they're obviously going to add someone. They're not just going to leave it up to Damian Williams and rookie Cleo Herbert. I know they have a couple other people, but I would look for maybe a lesser addition from the street. I don't know if they go the Marlon Mack route just because they shouldn't be giving up any sort of real draft capital. They're not going anywhere. They're not doing anything this year. So even if it's like a 4th or a 5th round pick that the Indy would want, it doesn't really seem to make sense to me that why they would do that, but it's the Bears, so that's probably what they'll do. But really more than anything, like the impact this has then on the rest of the offense is going to be kind of big. We don't know what that offense is going to be like without David Montgomery. So, in some ways it could be really good for some of these other pass catchers, but it also could be really bad because if they don't have a run game that is even respectable, then other wide receivers and tight ends are going to struggle with it. Which does bring us to point number 2, Allen Robinson. So last week, Brian and I were talking about Allen Robinson and mentioned at the end of the show, it might be time to start thinking about, is he a flex play? Do you sit him? What do you want to do with him? And yesterday, right, 3 receptions, 63 yards, only 3 targets. He's now second on the team in targets behind Darnell Mooney, who, by the way, has 77 more yards on 4 more catches. So Mooney has taken over. I'm not saying he's better than Allen Robinson, but he's playing better and getting more work than him right now. So for me personally, he's fully moved into the seat to believe it territory. If you have better, especially you have better wide receiver options, but even flex plays too, I don't think anyone can be faulted by putting him on your bench. And just having the realization that his first big blow up game might happen on your bench. But right now he's in PPR 9.5, 10.4, 4.7, 9.3. Right? That's not cutting it. That's not what you drafted Allen Robinson for. So it's tough. That's a lot of draft capital that you sunk into that player, but sunk cost fallacy is a thing. And if your team needs points, those 9 to 10 points a game, right, aren't really doing it for you. So, if you have better or comparable options, I think you have to do that. Now, obviously, with that said, the loss of Monty either is going to be a massive boom for him or it could be even worse. And they're playing Las Vegas next week, which we're seeing right now tonight. Not the worst matchup in the world, not the best. And then we also know the quarterback scenario. So if you are really dead set on starting him, you have to just be aware of, if I get 10 points, I can't be mad at it. And the rest of your team has to be able to pick that up, which is a tough strategy to win games. So just know, Allen Robinson, he might be a sit until he actually shows that he has some connection with Andy Dalton or Justin Fields, because right now he has none. Topic 3 is Miles Sanders in the Eagles backfield. This is tough. Miles Sanders is another one talking about Allen Robinson where they have not produced up to what is expected of them. So right now they're running out of 60-40 pass run split. And from there, Miles Sanders has 37 attempts. Jalen Hurts has 34, but then Kenny Gainwell has 19. So when you start to break those down between Sanders and Gainwell, Sanders is playing less. He's playing less than normal. This year he's around a 60 to 66% snap share, which is a little bit lower. Normally from week 10, 2019 on, he's been in really the 75, 80% offensive snap share area. So he's playing less, and Gainwell is making up that extra 30, 35%. The two of them are 99% of the running back snaps. So it's those two guys in Philly in regards to running back. So if have a little bit, you could say, like, oh, that's good, right? 60 to 66% of the snaps for Sanders, 30 to 35 for Gainwell, right? He's still getting a majority of the work. That's misleading. It's not really true. If you really start to then break it down from there, their rush attempts, week 1, 15 for Sanders, 9 for Gainwell. Week 13 to 6, 2 to 1, 7 to 3. Targets, week 1, 5 to 3, 2 to 3, 4 to 4. This past week, only 3 targets for Sanders and 8 for Gainwell. In half the snaps, he's getting half of the running back work. When Gainwell is on the field, he's getting the ball. He's getting his rush attempts. He's getting targets. So Sanders is out there more, but their workloads aren't that drastically different for how much different they're actually on the field playing with each other. So that's not good for Miles Sanders. It's very good for Kenny Gainwell. So Gainwell, 44% roster on Sleeper, 25% on ESPN. I think he's a very, very strong addition and someone to pick up, especially if you're hurting at the running back area. He's producing on a low volume, which I know can be scary at times, but seeing how much he's producing and how much work he's getting in those few snaps, when he's on the field, they are giving him the ball. And at this point, he's playing his way to get more work because he's producing, especially in the targets there. Eight targets this past week is huge. So, my advice, Kenny Gainwell, definitely a great addition if you have that bench spot. For Sanders, right now his return on ADP is not looking great. We have to hope that Sirianni realizes that Sanders deserves more. So either that's going to come at the expense of Gainwell, or they need to lessen that 60-40 split, because right now it's not viable for Sanders. Gainwell's doing well, but something's got to give. Or nothing gives, and Sanders is just a really bad bust for his ADP, which would suck. a lot of Miles Sanders last year was the reliance on those random 70-yard touchdown runs. And right now, he's not getting those. So you take out the massive boom plays, and this is what we get. So there's that boom bust coming back into play. So you got to hope if he's not being able to break those runs off, he needs to get more work. Next up, Robert Woods. I talked about Robert Woods last week, and my advice last week was don't panic. He's still getting a 20-something percent target share. He just doesn't have the connection with Stafford like Kupp does. This week, I don't feel as great about that. So he had a 14.6% target share, same as Higbee and Van Jefferson. So that's worrisome. When he's getting the same target share as Higbee and Van Jefferson, that's not great. Now, he played 96% of the snaps, which is great. So it's the same as Kupp, more than Higbee, more than Jefferson, way more than Deshaun Jackson. So he's on the field, and it's not clicking there. Kupp is his own beast. Kupp, no one's touching right now. No one's touching his target share. The issue is Higbee and Van Jefferson are eating into Robert Woods. And I do think at this time, panic might not be the right terminology, but it really might be time to start to think about, well, Woods might not be what we want him to be. And, that sucks because, Woods finally had the hype going into a season that he should have had for the last several years and never did. And now he does. And unfortunately, now this is kind of what we get. So for now, you have to keep playing him. He's still good. He's still on the field constantly. He's still getting 15 to the 25% share. It hasn't clicked yet. Once it clicks, it could be amazing. And then the top two guys are going to flourish. But right now we're not seeing it. So you play him, but you have to have lower expectations. With that said, Van Jefferson, put him on a watch list. If Kupp or Woods goes down, he could be a fantastic ad because he's already getting more and more work and more playing time, and starting to develop at least something with Stafford. So if one of those two goes down, he should step up and see a good role. So Van Jefferson's is someone you should really keep an eye on. Next, classic of this show, Zeke Elliott. So he's not looking too bad. I don't know if he's still washed up. Right, 20 carries. Pollard still did get 10, by the way. So, it's really going to look like it's game script is going to be huge. Positive game script. Zeke's going to be the guy. He's really back to looking that really rock solid RB1 at this point. They want to get him the ball. He's running well. He might not have the top speed anymore, but that's what we see in running backs, but he's still breaking tackles and scoring touchdowns, and that's what matters. So, Pollard's a little bit tougher. So if they're facing a more neutral or negative game script, or projected negative game script, Pollard is still a really good play, because he's going to catch those passes and get that work. If it's going to be something that you think, oh, they're going to be positive and they're going to be ahead, they're going to just grind it out with Zeke. So, I don't know if I wouldn't say Pollard goes all the way back to a not start or anything, but, be a little bit more aware of what do you think the game script's going to be for them, and think about what type of ceiling that might give for Zeke and or Pollard. Jeremy McNichols. All right, so the Titans, by the way, you lose to the Jets. What are you doing? So Jeremy McNichols had a massive game. I think he had 12 targets. It's nothing right now, right? AJ Brown, Julio Jones were out. Nick Westbrook, Ikine, Josh Reynolds, Chester Rogers, Anthony Ferguson, who let me down big. Those were the guys. So McNichols is the pass catching back. That was his role prior to yesterday. What we saw was that when your top wide receivers go down, someone has to catch the ball. So a reliable pass catcher out of the backfield is going to be a beneficiary of that. So right now he's someone that over the last, the beginning first 2 weeks or so, I added him on a ton of my teams, mostly because in case Henry goes down. But he's someone that is a good ad because he gets a small but a steady amount of work week to week. But we saw he does have a little bit of a brighter upside with injuries. So pay attention to AJ Brown and Julio Jones's health throughout the season or even the next couple weeks. But if they continue to be injured, Jeremy McNichols does now offer a much more appealing floor because of his pass catching ability. But I wouldn't overreact to what we saw here, right? Injuries were the big reason why. Next up, Tyson Williams. Healthy scratch. Healthy scratch is tough. And even there was a tweet from saying Harbaugh was like, oh, he was the odd man out. We wanted to get a couple of guys, a couple more carries. Honestly, I don't know if I fully believe that. I don't think you go out of your way to sit what seems to be their most efficient and their best running back for Latavius Murray and Bell and Devonta Freeman. And like, it seems worrisome. So the Tyson experiment may be over at this point. If you can flip him in any of your leagues, might not be a bad idea to get something while you still can. If you can't get anything from it, you might as well hold for one more week and see what happens. But right now, it's not looking good. I know his pass blocking might be the best out of those three right now, but that was a big problem. I know he got Lamar lit up at one point. So he might not be the guy that we all thought for a week or two. Another guy that might not be the guy, Myles Gaskin. Yikes. So Malcolm Brown outrushed by Malcolm Brown and Savon Ahmed. No targets in a negative game script. That's really bad. Right. More than anything, if he was going to be catching passes, you'd think he would be catching passes. And especially in a game like yesterday where they were chasing the whole time. It's panic time on Myles Gaskin. It's not looking good. It hasn't really looked good this year overall for what a lot of people were expecting or opining on Twitter. And realistically, next week, they have Tampa Bay. And we just saw what they did to New England, who loves to run the ball. And we know what Tampa Bay's rush defense is the whole year and even back into last year and the year before that. So you can't play him next week. If you have him and you're still dead set on being a Gaskin person, you just have to hold and wait for 2 weeks away and see what happens. But right now, you can't start him. You can't start him against Tampa Bay. If he's not catching passes and you can't run or you're getting outrushed by Malcolm Brown and Ahmed, that's not good. So panic time, Myles Gaskin. All right. Last of the major ones, DeAndre Hopkins. He's someone I'm not panicking on. Last week, he was coming back from rib injury and still got 6 targets. This week, he actually led the team with 7 targets. The difference is he went 4 for 67. AJ Green, 6 targets, but 567 and 1. Max Williams, 5 targets, 555 and 1. So people look at the fantasy points and get worried, but it was the difference of catching a touchdown or not. So it sucks, but he's not going to catch a touchdown every week. It is what it is. The issue and what's really sticking out to me in Arizona is the target share. So Nuke is still leading the way at 18.6, but then AJ Green is at 18. Chase Edmonds, 16.5. Rondale Moore, 13.5. Christian Kirk, 13.5. Max Williams, 11.9 or 12%. So the issue is it's no longer this funnel offense to DeAndre Hopkins. Kyler's spreading the ball around significantly more this year than he was last year. And right, that's why so many of us loved Kyler at the Undroppables. But, it seems at this point that Nuke's ceiling might really be limited, which does suck. I was very high personally on DeAndre Hopkins. And right now this offense is clicking. So you kind of have to now rely more on efficiency in scoring points rather than just maybe some all-out regular counting stats. He's not going to get these 180 targets like we were hoping for. All right, and rapid fire to end this up here. So Marlon Mack, This is from Adam Levitan. So Marlon Mack went from trade block last week to handling 36% of their running back carries and 28% of their running back targets yesterday. It's the clearest example of Indianapolis just trying to showcase him to get a trade. He had 10 rushes yesterday. So the 36% of their running back carries, those 10 rushes, 6 of them were in the last 4.5 minutes of the game when the game was over. They just get Jonathan Taylor out of there and just let Mack run up some clock time. So the game was over. Those stats mean nothing. Don't do anything about Marlon Mack. That's just them trying to find a trade partner. And oh, by the way, Jonathan Taylor, 16 carries, 103 yards, and a touchdown. Please let him do more, Indianapolis. Sam Darnold, best rushing quarterback ever. I mean, come on. What is he doing? Is it 5 rushing? That's probably going to slow down. I would imagine it's going to slow down. But should then be bolstered by passing touchdowns. So regression fantasy points wise probably shouldn't happen too much. Though there was very negative game script that he had this past week against Dallas. So, right now he's playing fantastic and DJ Moore is amazing because of him. So you just got to be happy with, if you have Darnold, that's a great streamer that you're able to roll out. Last 2 people before we sign off here, Dawson Knox. So his target share, here's a great, this is from Brian. So shout out to Brian. His target share percentage was higher than his rostership on ESPN last week. So 27% target share to only 20% rostership. You have to have Dawson Knox. If he's available in your league, I don't care who your tight end is, go pick up Dawson Knox. Because either you're starting him or you're making sure no one else is starting him against you. He's now strung together several good weeks. His first 4 weeks, he's been doing well. He's been catching passes. He's been catching touchdowns. So he's also on the field a lot. He's getting a significant snap share. The touchdowns might not be able to be there throughout the entire year. Maybe a little Robert Tonyan-esque from last year, but right now, the way that he's being used and he's being targeted, you have to pick him up. And the tight end landscape, we all know, is awful. So the fact that his rostership is so low is abysmal. So if he's available in your league, you have to go pick him up. And lastly, Tyler Lockett. The roller coaster continues. Right? People are on the sell train. I don't think you can do that at this point. Frankly, if you drafted Tyler Lockett, you should have been going into this with the expectation of you're going to have 40-point weeks and 5-point weeks. And so far, that's kind of, we've had those up and downs. If you're going to sell again, you have to wait back for the uptick. That's what it is. But I think realistically, if you drafted well, Tyler Lockett is someone that you do the roller coaster with, because the rest of your team, you might lose a week because he scores 5, but the week he scores 45, he'll get you that win. So you got to hope the rest of your team can balance that out. But he's someone that, if you can stick as your wide receiver 2 or maybe even a wide receiver 3, depending on how your drafts go, or he's your 1, but your 2 and 3 are really, really steady, something along those lines that allow you to balance it out, that would be the way to go. All right, everybody. So this one went a little bit long, 23 minutes, but thanks for sticking around, and I will see you next week. Peace.